Aaron, so the PTR for season 26 just started, and I thought, of course, we should look at the new season theme. And of course, the new season theme is Echoing Nightmare. And basically, there are 3 new things here. We have a thing called Petrified Scream. We have, of course, the Echoing Nightmare itself, which is when you are entering the portal. So, right, you can see it right here. Transmute into a nice cube, almost a portal to Echoing Nightmare. And we also have a new thing here called Whisper of Atonement. Now, this is a really cool item and can be used for augmenting. I'm going to show that after. But first, if we open the Petrified Scream in the cube, where we transmute it like we do anything else, it opens a portal. You open it, you go into it here. And this can be a different map. So you can see we are currently in some kind of cemetery here, which is kind of scary. Let's see if we can find. There are also pylons in every corner. So there's a conduit, there's a channeling, a shield, and a power. So in every corner, there will be a different pylon you can click. And of course, you can just fly around and just kill stuff. Basically, the objective in here is to get higher in these tiers and not be overwhelmed. So the more monsters you kill, the higher level you go. And the higher level you go with the tiers, the better loot you get, the more XP you get. The better this gem you get after, called the Whisper of Atonement, will also become, right? So you complete this. After you've done this, you will get a Whisper of Atonement. And then depending on how high you clear in terms of the current tier, right? Depending on how high you can clear that, the better level of Whisper of Atonement you will get. So you see, I'm just blasting with the new barbarian, and it's just absolutely insane. We can just blast, and it is so much fun. You guys should really try this build out. I'll of course make a full guide for this build later, but as you can see here, we're just blasting. So basically, there are 2 ways to be defeated in here and to lose. Either, of course, by dying. There's also if you get overwhelmed, which basically means if there are too many monsters, right? So you can't just stand AFK and just kite mobs forever and then, of course, try and get a high clear. Doesn't work like that, unfortunately. So basically, those are the 2 ways of doing it. Either you get overwhelmed or you die, and of course they scale higher and higher. You can see current tier slows down if you can't kill stuff, but if you're killing stuff quickly, of course it goes up a lot quicker. So if we keep doing like this, we just keep charging around. Of course, this is a really fun build, but we're just gonna keep charging around and trying to get this current tier as high as we can, because the higher we go, we also get better gear, we get more blood shots, we basically get everything better if we can go higher in the current tier. So let's just see how we can get this. Of course, there are the different pylons that we have a power over here. You can click that now. Of course, I will make a full guide for this later on, but I just want to show you guys a quick example of how this works. As you can see, I'm now starting to take a lot of damage. Basically, the mobs are probably like really high in terms of grade of level, and there you go. I died at 114. We can of course revive in here, and then of course we get this chest over here, and you can see our paragon will go up a lot. Lovely paragon. And of course we also get a ton of gear. Now as you can see here, we have a Whisper of Atonement dropped here. It dropped a level 100, and of course also a ton of gear, blood shots, everything like that. And you can then of course just rinse repeat, right? You get more of the Petrified Scream, and in case you didn't know, the Petrified Scream drops from Rift Guardians and Great Rifts. So of course there's a whole thing here now of doing normal rifts to get Great Rift keys, and then of course doing Great Rifts to get Petrified Screams. Now we got 100 Rifts of Atonement here, but we also got pretty high. Now of course we saw we got a Whisper of Atonement level 100. Let's see what actually happens if we don't complete anything here, right? So of course, if we aren't very strong early season, we can of course still go into Echoing Nightmare by using our Petrified Scream. But let's say in case we are pretty weak and we can't really kill our monsters, we can maybe get to current tier of 6 or so. We're not really gonna get a really good Whisper of Atonement. So there we go, we died at tier 7, which is not very good, right? So let's open up our chest and see what we get in here. As you can see, we actually didn't get anything at all, right? So let's try this again and then try and go a bit further up and see what then happens. So what I'm gonna see now is if we get somewhere between current tier 50 and 100, do we then get a Whisper of Atonement level 50? So if before we did one over 100, but it still only was 100, so we did about a 55. If we open up now and see what we get, Whisper of Atonement here, level 55. So as you can see here, this is such a good way to actually make augments everything in this game right now. So if you take this Whisper of Atonement, of course we can see it was quite easy. Even with just 500 paragon, we could easily get them all to level 100. This one level 55 because we're standing FK, but of course it looks pretty easy to get at least to a level 100, maybe even higher. But we can of course then use these for augmenting. So if we take our Whisper of Atonement, we go over to the cube just like we do anything else. We do Whisper of Atonement, we do our 3 Florios Rubies, of course for strength here. Of course you can always pick the statue after, so these 2 here, and then of course an ancient item. Let's go this rep in here, and boom, there you can see 500 main stat right there, and that took less than maybe 2-3 minutes to even make. So basically what you do is you do normal rifts, of course, to get Great Rift keystones like we have over here. You then do the Great Rift, and then there's a small chance you'll get a Petrified Scream. You then use the Petrified Scream in the cube to open the Echoing Nightmare, and then in the Echoing Nightmare, depending on how high you can go, of course, depending on how strong you are, you can then make a Whisper of Atonement higher and higher level. And then you can use that to, of course, augment your gear. So that is a really, really nice way of doing it. And also, it looks like these Echo Nightmares also giving a ton of XP anyway. They're pretty fun, actually quite quick to do as well. I'm definitely pleasantly surprised by how good these Echo Nightmares actually are. So it shouldn't take long at all in this season to also make really good augments, just like we could in season 25, which is really, really nice. Now let's do another Echo Nightmare just to see again how it feels like, right? So in each corner, you'll have a different pylon. There's a channeling, a shield, power, and a conduit. So they are a bit different than what you normally spend in the grid. For instance, the conduit is a different kind of scaling. It saps different kind of mobs. I'm not too sure yet as to how they work exactly. I'll of course make a full guide for how to really blast this later on so you can make a best augments possible. But for right now, I just want to show you guys here on the first day. The PTR has only been online for maybe 2 hours or so, so we don't really know a whole lot yet. But I just want to show you guys how this Echo Nightmare works. As you can see here, we are in a different kind of arena this time, and we have some different mobs. So it looks like, so far from what I've seen, there are at least 4, maybe even 6 different arenas, and of course also different mob types. So some of the mob types are slow like these guys. These are probably really easy for like a demon hunter to kill. And then there's also like wild storms, grotesque, stuff like that, which can be a bit more difficult to kill. So I'd also assume that, of course, depending on the mob type you get, you can probably get higher and higher tier. Some might be quicker to get a high tier with. I don't really know yet, but basically you can go around this corner. Of course, I don't want to kill all the monsters immediately when they spawn, but we don't want to be overwhelmed. Now, this build is actually just ridiculous. I'm loving this bot build so far. It is so nice. It is so satisfying just watching these stones just boom, just fly around, right? So there's not too much to the Echo Nightmare itself. It is fairly simple to do. Of course, make sure you have the correct build that is made for this. It's of course going to be the most important thing, right? You don't want to be on just a random T16 build. It's basically like graded. It's somewhere between, you know, a speed gear but also a push. I'm not sure what would be the best setup yet. I'm of course going to be farming this for hours and hours to see what is the best setup. Do we go for a high push build? Do we go for a speed build? And of course that will be on this channel as well later on in the season, probably in a few days. But for now, I just want to see how this actually works out, and it is a lot of fun actually. I'm enjoying this a whole lot. Feels actually pretty satisfying to be in this arena. It also seems like a pretty good way to test new builds. Of course, I'm not sure how the drop chance of the petrified scream will be so far yet, but I'm at least having a ton of fun with it just to see how to test it here in the PTR. And I would definitely recommend you guys also try this build when you can, of course, if it is the PTR or if you're watching this after the PTR. All right, so let's see. We just got over at tier 1, 2, 3. Nice. And let's open the chest and see what we get. Of course, a ton of Paragon. And our Whisper of Atonement is level 100 again. So it seems like there's some kind of balance here in terms of if you go to 100 or so, it maxes out there. And of course, if you can get to 150, then it'll probably get to 150. So it seems like between tier 0 and 100 in the Rift, of course, each tier you do will give you 1 more level on it. But if you do over level 100, but you can't do 150, it seems to be stopping at tier 100. So even though you can do 120, 130, it looks like it stops at 100, which is, I guess, okay, right? But of course, this is still a really, really scuffed character. As you can see, my gear is just really bad. I don't have cone reduction. I have like 0% crit chance. So hopefully it shouldn't be too difficult getting to 150. So you can, of course, get the max level of the Whisper of Atonement. Now, if you enjoyed this video, also make sure to check out the video here, as it will be covering everything there is in the PTR for season 26. And I'll see you in that video. Peace out, everyone.